Here are 11 lazy ways to keep your workshop clean and tidy, and make sure you watch till the end because there's a bonus tip I guarantee you haven't seen before. So let's start with the messiest machine in the workshop, the mitre saw. Now I've got a top of the range Bosch machine here, but it doesn't matter what make or model you have, this causes the most mess in the workshop. And the so-called, laughably called dust extraction that comes with these tools is really not fit for purpose. So what I'll do is I'll cut to a different shot where you can see me make 10 cuts in quick succession, speeded up, and we'll look at the amount of mess that's around the saw, and then I'll show you a fantastic hack to cut down on 90% of that sawdust. So all around the saw is clean and tidy. I've got this machine hooked up to a Festool MIDI vacuum. I'm going to make 10 cuts and then we'll look at the dust. So that's 10. Let's have a look at the dust. So I'll just hoover that up and then I'll show you the trick. Okay, you can see what I've done here. I've fitted an aftermarket dust collector to my table saw. This is actually made by Shop Nation. A guy called Travis has designed a lot of these for all different sorts of makes and models of mitre saw. You can buy these ready-made. This is a first generation one, they're slightly different now. But a second generation from the website is currently around $40–45. Or if you have a 3D printer like I do, they're less than $15 for the plans. If you make your own, I just used a bicycle inner tube here, turned sort of inside out so it flares outwards and it gives me a good collection here. Again, I've hooked it up to the same Festool MIDI dust collector. But what I did was I've left on, I'll take it off when I start cutting, but I left on the standard one that comes with the saw, and you can see how far back this is in comparison with this that's almost shrouded the blade itself. Now there is a small disadvantage to this in that you can't have zero clearance right back at the fence, because when it comes down it needs to go through the fence. But hey, I'll put up with that. This is quite a good saw anyway. I don't get a lot of tear out at the back, but I'd rather that than having lots of dust. So what I'll do now is I'll take this off, reset the camera up, and I'll cut 10 quick cuts like I did before so we can compare how much mess I've made. Now it's not 100% proof, obviously, there's still some dust, but it does get probably 90% of the dust goes straight up into the chute. So I'll move the camera and we'll have a look at that now. So here we go with 10 quick cuts. As you can see, there's a little bit of dust here. There's nothing over the back. Very little over the back, I mean next to nothing. A little bit of dust in the front here, tiny amounts that are quickly swept up. It's chalk and cheese compared with the stock standard dust collector that comes with the machine. Let's move on. Number two is super simple. In fact, you've already seen me do it. You just didn't notice, and that's the 1 minute rule. If something is only going to take 1 minute to clean it up straight away. Couldn't be simpler. And you saw me do that around the table saw when I hoovered up after the first series of 10 cuts. I'll speed that up just so you can see. Literally only took me 50 seconds to clean up around the table saw, and each time you come to a workstation like that, it's clean and tidy and ready for use. Plus it's healthier because there's less sawdust sitting around. So let's move on to number 3, and you've already seen me do this as well, and that's have somewhere for your scraps of wood. When I was working at the mitre saw there and making those 20 cuts, you saw me throwing the pieces of timber away. Well, that's because I have a box for scraps underneath the mitre saw. I have another one underneath the table saw. So when I've got scraps that are going to go basically in my wood burner, I just throw them in the box. They're not building up into piles on benches or around the table saw. Everything is just in a box. I've also got a crate of offcuts from the laser that I also use to burn in the wood burner. And next up is have a home for your dustpan and brushes, your broom, your dusters, etc., etc. Buy a few dustpans and brushes. I've got one here, I've got one by the side of the chimney, I've got another one attached to my table saw on a hook. My bigger broom it's got a home by the door, it's hung up. I even have a duster for getting rid of cobwebs, because my workshop is 160 years old and has more spiders than you can shake a stick at. But you know, their own dustpans and brushes are €5, $5 each. If you use one, you know, I'd be using one, then I'd need it somewhere else. I didn't know where I'd left it. Now I have a home for them. They're always hanging up. It makes it a lot easier, and that makes the 1 minute rule easier to implement. If you know where the dustpan and brush is, sweep it up, job done. And next up, I suggest that you embrace the power of magnets. If I added up all of the time that I've spent looking for tape measures throughout my life, I could probably have a 2-week holiday. All I've done here is I've got a wall board, a couple of rare earth magnets on, got my tape measure, out of the way. It's not on the bench. More importantly, I know where it is. It's right next to my mitre saw, which is where I probably use it the most. Also here I've got a couple of the same magnets just on a board holding 6 small screwdrivers. They're not on the bench, they're not lost, they have a home. Simple. If you're getting a pattern here of things having a home. If things have a home, you can keep your workshop tidy just by putting them back to where they're supposed to be. So tip number 6, have a specific day where you do a deeper clean. Now I do that on a Saturday mornings in fact. That's the day where I have a bigger sweep up. I clean my laser, you know, I take the lens apart and give it a proper clean. I do other things. I make sure that everything is put away tidy. So it's a sort of reset day, or not all day. It takes me 1 or 2 hours in the morning, but I do a deeper clean every Saturday. And the fact that I have a specific day to do it, it's habitual for me. That's the first thing I do every Saturday. Clean the laser, sweep up, make sure everything is in its place, clean and tidy. It's a good way that things don't get away from you. You know, it's quite easy for mess to sneak up on you, and having a scheduled time slot once a week is a great way of keeping on top of things. So number 7, more about dust collection, this time with the bigger tools. As you know, I have a relatively small shop, so I don't have room to mount ductwork along the walls with T's coming off to each individual station. That would cost me too much in the way of wall space, plus it's expensive, I guess. So I've come up with another solution where I just have the one umbilical gourd to service my table saw, bandsaw and thickness planer, and I've 3D printed a magnetic coupling which is on the end of my flexible hose and also on those various tools. Anyway, I'll cut away and you can see that in action. It's a very good way of saving wall space, so you don't need the ducting and the cost of the extra tubing, T's, dust gates, etc, etc. Anyway, it works a treat for me. Have a look to see what I've done. So here's my dust extraction system, somewhat homemade. I converted industrial cleaner, which has got in fact 2 motors on it, and I attached that to a homemade cyclone. but I only have the one umbilical cord, and that comes up to the ceiling and across and down to my table saw down here. I'll just move the camera and show you what that's attached to. So here's the flexible hose, and that attaches to the table saw. This end is what we're interested in. This is just a ring with magnets on, and I have a similar ring on the bandsaw and the thickness planer that simply magnetizes on. Now I'll go and show you those tools. So here's the thickness planer. Things are on wheels in this workshop because I don't have a lot of room, but you can see here is a similar coupler, and all I have to do is that. Simple as. And that saves me all of that ducting around the walls and dust gates, which would cost money. And I have a very similar coupler on here, well, they're same virtually. I'll take a photograph of that and show you. Next up, I'd like to talk a little bit about storage in general. I'm not a fan of cupboards or drawers overly. They do have their uses. I have got some cupboards and drawers, but they become a bit of a lost graveyard of stuff. Which cupboard was that in? Where did I put this? I far prefer these transparent boxes. They're flexible, they come in all sorts of sizes. I've got a couple of places where I can keep them on top of other things so I can see straight into them. And for example, here I'm just holding various spare cans of stuff. I use quite a lot of spray varnish. I've got 2 new cans here, one matte, one gloss, for when I run out of the matte and gloss ones that are to hand. The same with WD-40. I've got one that I use, but this is a spare one, and I've got a couple of other things here. But I can see where I keep this, I can see straight in it. I know which one is holding my cans, and I can see which cans are inside it. This also goes for smaller tools. There's always that stuff on the bench that is in effect an open junk drawer. I often put things in there, so I'm not throwing those things away, but they're in one place, one box. So instead of having to move lots of things, I can just move one box. I can still see in it, think, oh, where did I put that? It's in that box, I can see it. So I really recommend upping your game just with some cheap transparent boxes. Another quick tip is, if you are doing, say, a deeper clean on a Saturday, is to do maybe a 20 or 30 minute speed clean on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. It just keeps things under control. You can easily set a timer on your phone, plug in your earbuds with your favourite Spotify list, and just go around for 10, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever suits your size and space, to get things, keep things, in fact, under control midweek. It's not going to take long, and when you come in the following day, everything will be nice and in its place. Another little tip is to have a clear bench policy. Now, not necessarily every bench, but your main workbench. If you're packing up in the evening, afternoon, whenever, before you walk out of the workshop, just tidy your bench, clear it. I mean, offices do this all the time, but there's a reason for it, especially in the workshop, because if you come in to a messy bench, it's harder to get going. You've got to start by tidying up. It's a lot easier, psychologically at least, to clean the bench in the evening and come into the workshop with a nice clear bench so you're ready to rock and roll the following day. I'll just show you my bench now, before and after. So here you can see my bench after a day's work. The bane of my life is chargers and cables. I'm forever charging up video cameras, lights, etc, etc. So going back to the plastic tubs idea, I just put everything in here at the end of the day, keeps the bench nice and tidy, and I know where all of these things live, so when I need one tomorrow, they're ready to go. There's a lid for that just over there. I'll put them in there in a second. Now you can see these are, you know, typically what you're going to have out are some tape measures, possibly some clamps. I've been doing some sanding, hammer, screws, etc, etc. Just going to take me a few minutes to tidy those away, and then I'll have a clear bench for the morning. So that has literally taken me 5 minutes, and I've got a clear desk, so when I come in the morning, everything is nice and tidy, gives me a good feeling, and I'm ready to start work. So next up, let's talk about my French cleats. I get asked a lot of questions about this. Now obviously I geeked out a little bit with my cleats, but there's a purpose here. I've rearranged them. The order they were in before was for a photo shoot. This is how I normally keep them, and I'll tell you why. Let's start here with the speed square. This is near the mitre saw, so it's only within hand's reach for where I use it the most when I'm marking. And that goes the same for the tape measures. I'll measure how long I want to cut something, make a mark, use the speed square, draw a line and cut. So these are close together. The ear defenders are next to the mitre saw because that's where I need them most. Now I do actually have other pairs of ear defenders. I've got one over by the table saw and I've got one by the drill press, because if that's where I'm working, I just want to reach, put them on, do the work, put them back. It's just speeds up productivity. The same with my goggles and my mask, although the mask isn't on here at the moment, it's on the bench. More marking tools here. I keep my iPhone there. Here I'm doing mock-ups, assembly, some assembly, that sort of thing. So scissors, compass, small socket set, got another socket set up here, pencils, small drivers for taking things apart or putting them back together, steel rule. Here, I don't know if you can see, but I've got tape, CA glue and activator close to the gloves, because if I'm working with a super glue I want to have some gloves on to save gluing my hands together. Here I've got some spray mount. Here I've got a stock of batteries. If you've got grandchildren, you know why I need those. Here I've got some of the clear varnish that I normally spray my cleats up with, and that's because the spray booth or spraying area is below this bench. And here I've got some other hand tools that I'm using for little jobs. Here I've got a couple of hammers. In fact, I've got 4 hammers, but this one I use the most for assembly. That's why it's here. I've got the mag light. I've got some spirit that I clean my laser with, but I didn't want it any closer than that because I've got the chimney and the wood burner. I didn't want to have any fire hazards. So you get an idea. Everything that I use the most is close to hand, and I couldn't recommend more. Listing the 10 tools that you use the most. Now it will vary for some people. If you're using hand tools a lot, then you might want chisels and planes near to, close to hand. But these are the things that I use the most, and that's why they're here. Now I'll cut away and show you my shelves because I've got all my power tools up there. They're all together, and we'll walk you through that briefly. So a similar story here. Each tool has a home, so I know that if there's nothing on that shelf, I know that the light needs to be put back. And here, this is mainly my cordless tools. Here are all the batteries for these tools. So grab a driver, put the tool in. Once I've used it, put it on charge. Here are all the bits for the drivers, and here are all nuts and bolts and so on. A good pair of sturdy working gloves. Up here I've got some metal working files, chisels and a mallet and some wood glue. So you get an idea of how things are grouped together. That keeps the place tidy. Obviously it's clean because I can clean benches and so on, because these things aren't down on my workbenches, and everything is tidy. So that's what I do with my French cleats. If you're interested in more information on those, have a look at the website neatfrenchcleat.com, and you'll see you can actually buy the plans. If you have a laser, this could be a perfect solution for you too. Let's talk a little bit about toolboxes. We all buy various tools, be it sanders, nail guns, reciprocal saws and so on. And unless you're buying Festool, they don't come in boxes that are the same size, and this can be quite an issue as to where to store them. The beauty of Festool, of course, is that all of their storage is modular, so you just stack it on top of each other. But all of these various shapes and sizes that other tools come in can cause a bit of an issue, and I've come up with a great solution that I've never seen anywhere else. So let's talk about that now. So here you can see the sort of collection that you end up with if you've got any sort of workshop. Here I've got a couple of nail guns, a reciprocal saw, biscuit jointer, a Hilti, a socket set, a pocket hole screw set and a dowling set. And you know, in general these things get shoved under a bench and accumulate dust. They're not particularly easy to get at, etc. And all I've done is the simplest thing is I've screwed French cleats to the back of each of these boxes, so they now hang on the wall. They're easy to access. These two live near my assembly bench because that's where I use these. The others tend to live on the back wall out of the way above the diode laser enclosure. It's super simple to do, costs probably €2 in some timber that was 4 inches wide by 3/4 that I ripped down at 45 degrees, and a couple of screws in each. These can hold quite heavy tools. This Hilti box is quite heavy, the reciprocal saw is fairly heavy, and the biscuit jointer. So it's just a perfect solution for getting things out from under the bench and onto the wall for easy access. You can see where it is. Again, it has a specific home. If these were all under the bench and I was looking for the socket set but I'd left that upstairs, I wouldn't know because it doesn't have a home. These all have a home now, and I'll show you a photograph of where they live normally. So here you can see is a back wall that I wouldn't really use above my diode laser enclosure, and I've got those large toolboxes hanging on the wall, each with a home, nicely out of the way. I really recommend this method. I've never seen anybody else use it. You can add 1 or 2 French cleats to the back of each box depending on what's in it, how heavy it is, etc. So here are the pocket screw holders and the dowling kit just above the bench. If I need them, I just lift them off, use them, put them back out of the way, off the bench, clean and tidy. They have a home. I always know where to find them. If you found this video useful, please like and subscribe. It means a lot to a small channel like mine. If you have things that you do to keep your workshop clean and tidy, please drop a line in the comments below. And if your workshop's in need of a deeper clean, have a look at this video on Swedish death cleaning. That might help you. Okay, I've been Alan, you've been watching. I'll see you in the next video.